Hello YouTube divers, this is WaterDive 122 and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. Today we are going to be doing another album ranking, the first real album ranking that we have done in almost a full calendar year. I know it's been that long, but today we are finally back with another album ranking. We are going to be talking about German power metal legend Edguy. Yes, the Edguy, led by the one, the only, Tobias frickin' Sammet. There is absolutely no adjective that I could possibly use to describe the genius of this man. Tobias Sammet, not only one of the best songwriters in all of European power metal, not only one of the best musicians in all of European power metal, just one of the best figures in all of European power metal, or just in the metal community as a whole. Like, if you know Edguy, thank Tobias Sammet. If you know Avantasia, thank Tobias Sammet. If it wasn't for Tobias Sammet, these two bands, these two projects, would not have even existed. Just plain and freaking simple. And it's not just Tobias Sammet who is basically the star of Edguy. I also have to give props to their lead guitar player, Jens Ludwig, who was basically their main collaborative songwriter, if that makes sense. Because Sammet basically wrote 95% of Edguy's music, and Jens Ludwig basically did like some songwriting stuff here and there, like maybe like one or two songs per record, if that makes sense, but mostly it's Tobias Sammet doing the songwriting credits. And he does an absolutely amazing job. So enough about that. We are going to be ranking Edguy's albums from worst to best. Now, just keep in mind, I don't think Edguy released a god-awful, bad, terrible album. No. They never did that. However, I do think that they have released some relatively weak albums. And those are the albums that we're going to get into first. So, without further ado, let's dive in and rank all 10 Edguy albums from worst to first. So, number 10, we got the 2008 album, Tinnitus Sanctus. I know this might be a little bit of a surprise to some Edguy fans, because I've seen how some of them are really fond with this record. Now, outside of some standout tracks like Ministry of Saints, Sex, Fire, Religion, the beautiful ballad that is Thorn Without a Rose, which is my favorite song off the record, Speedhoven, and Dragonfly, outside of those 5 songs, I don't really understand the hype for this record. Now, in my opinion, this album is not bad. It just has some weird songwriting moments that just simply does not fit in. And whilst I do think that Tobias Sammet is a phenomenal songwriter, he's not exactly flawless. And that's kind of how I feel about this record. He wrote every single track on this record. Most of these songs are really good, especially those 5 tracks that I mentioned. But then you have other tracks like 929 and the final track, Are You a Little Pervert Too, which quite honestly is one of my least favorite Edguy songs. Just no. The album has a very dark sound to it, a very dark, heavy, punchy atmosphere. But the lyrics can get very, very over the top, very cheesy at times. And in my opinion, it just does not flow well together. It just does not fit in. Now, it'd be one thing if they actually tried to go in that 80s glam metal style with these cheesy lyrics, or if they just scrapped those cheesy lyrics and if they wrote some more darker, heavier power metal type of lyrics to coincide with the actual atmosphere and production of this record, then chances are this would rank a lot higher in my rankings. But mainly because of how this album was structured, and given the lack of memorable and just enjoyable tracks to me, is why I put it at the bottom. So, Tinnitus Sanctus, not a bad album. It's just kind of hit or miss for me. Same can be said about number 9, Age of the Joker from 2011. It basically has the same problems that Tinnitus Sanctus has. The only difference, and the reason why Age of the Joker ranks a little bit higher in my opinion, is because there's more tracks on here that I can enjoy. Now this was the other album that Tobias completely wrote without having any more songwriting credits from Jens Ludwig. And his songwriting skills as an individual songwriter are way better on this record than it is Tinnitus Sanctus. Yes, there are still some cheesy songs on here. There are still some weird songwriting moments that do not fit in, much like the previous record. But then you have songs like Robin Hood, Nobody's Hero, Fire on the Downline, Behind the Gates to Midnight World, Every Night Without You, and the Arcane Guild. And whether you like to believe I actually like the song or not, but I actually do, 2 out of 7. Yes, it's cheesy. Yes, it's corny. Yes, it can be over the top at times. But I'm just such a sucker for that track. I really dig it. This album definitely has its high points, but I would not really put it in the same level as some of the other albums that we are going to get to. So with that said, Age of the Joker from 2011 coming in here at number 9. Number 8, Kingdom of Madness from 1997, the band's official debut album. Now, I say that because many people consider the Savage Poetry from 1995, or at least the 1995 version of Savage Poetry, to be their official debut album. I do not. I just simply do not. I consider Kingdom of Madness to be the band's official debut album, mostly because this was the first album that was actually recorded in a professional studio, for the most part, and the songs just feel like songs that you would have on a debut album. At least, in my opinion, disregarding that wonderful 18.5-minute epic that is The Kingdom. Most of the songs, this album basically feels like a debut album, given its lack of production. Something that they would get really good at on future records. The songwriting isn't really fleshed out, but it is very strong for what it is. And this was the first of 2 albums where Tobias Sammet actually played the bass and sang. And he has some really, really good moments on here. Particularly in the latter half of the album. But songs like Paradise has a great groove and riff. Wings of a Dream has one of the best choruses from Edguy. Angel Rebellion is this awesome power metal track. Deadmaker is a very fun song, and of course the aforementioned Kingdom. The Kingdom. That is an awesome song. This album is a very, very solid start. I really like this album. So many great riffs, so many great vocal lines, so many great performances from the band. It really just shows that Edguy really started off very well, even though the band and critics alike have sort of bashed this record and basically said that Edguy was a band that didn't really have a future. But boy, did they prove them wrong. And we're going to get to their second album right now, because it's my number 7 pick. The number 7 is Vainglory Opera from 1998. This is very interchangeable with Kingdom of Madness because I basically have the same opinions about these 2 records. They both have punchy riffs. They both have great vocal lines. But I put Vainglory Opera just a little bit higher because the production is way better and the songwriting is way better. It really shows that Edguy weren't weren't fooling around. They did so much improvement in just a year between albums. And I really like that improvement. I really love it when a band is given as basically being labeled as underdogs, if you will, and then they do something that's completely out of the ordinary, and they just make an amazing record. That's what Vainglory Opera is, in my opinion. So many great songs on here with tracks like Until We Rise Again, How Many Miles, which has a very cool keyboard part at the very start, Out of Control, which features Hansi Kirsch, the lead singer of Blind Guardian. He does an awesome job on that song. The title track is great. No More Foolin' is a very cool hard rock song. And my favorite song on this record has to go to the ballad that is Tomorrow. I adore this track. It is, without question, one of my favorite Edguy songs. One of my favorite Edguy ballads, for that matter. Really love that song. Alright, moving on to number 6. We're going to be talking about their most recent album, Space Police, Defenders of the Crown, released in 2014. Talk about a return to form. After the 2 weaker Edguy albums, the band rebounded in a big way, with basically returning back to their power metal roots that made a lot of their earlier records a thing, really. So many great things about this record. The production is so dark and heavy. The lyrics are very, very power metal like. I love it when the music and the lyrics coincide with one another, if that makes sense. Something that the previous 2 records didn't really do, in my opinion, but they improved it drastically on this record. I really love it. Space Police and Defenders of the Crown, quite possibly the 2 most overplayed songs on the record. Very, 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 very great songs. Love those 2 tracks. You also have the Realms of Baba Yaga. What a name that is. Really fun track as well. You also have the ballad Alone in Myself, which is awesome. And my favorite track on here has to go to Love Tiger. Now, yes, it does. Now, like 2 out of 7 from the Age of the Joker. It is very cheesy. It is very corny at times, and it can get over the top in some areas. But yeah, I'm just a sucker for that song. I love it. I love it. What more do you want me to say? So with that said, Space Police, Defenders of the Crown from 2014, coming in here at number 6. Okay, so number 5, Rocket Ride from 2006. This album, in my opinion, was the final album of Edguy's classic period, if that makes sense. Basically ranging from Theater of Salvation all the way here to Rocket Ride. Rocket Ride definitely has some great songs on here. And this was really one of those Edguy albums that I was really excited to get to going into their discography. So there's a lot of great songs on here. Sacrifice is great. The title track is awesome. Basically 2 songs that I could see on records like Mandrake or Hellfire Club, for example. You also have Save Me, which is an awesome track that could have easily been on records like Vainglory Opera or heck, even Theater of Salvation. I really love Save Me. It's probably my favorite song on the record. Then you have Superheroes, which is probably their most popular song off of this record. I mean, heck, it got a whole EP named after it the year after, or somewhere around that time. It's an awesome song. It really is. Then you have Return to the Tribe, which is up there with Save Me as one of my favorite tracks from the record. Really, it depends on my mood, but for right now, Save Me is my favorite song off of Rocket Ride. Really like that song, and I really love this album. Really great stuff. Alright, now, number 4, Mandrake from 2001. Alright, so this is probably most Edguy fans' number 1, and I totally understand that. It's a great album. It's an essential power metal album. It's one of those power metal albums that has to be a must listen when you're getting into the genre. However, I do think that there are albums that are better than this one. And we'll get to that, and we'll get to those in just a moment. Tears of a Mandrake, the biggest, probably Edguy's most overplayed song, probably the most popular song. But it's a great track. Really great track. You have Golden Dawn, which is awesome. Jerusalem's great. Nailed to the Wheel is so freaking heavy. The Pharaoh is up there with some of their best epics. Wash Away the Poison has to be one of their best ballads. Fallen Angels, another big hit for them. And Save Us Now and The Devil and the Savant. Really, really killer stuff on here. There's some great moments on here. The production is freaking sick. Tobias Sammet is pretty much in his element. Like, just entering his pinnacle on this record. I really love his voice on this. Really great stuff. So Mandrake comes in here at number 4. Okay, now we're entering the top 3. My number 3 and my number 2 could possibly be interchangeable. But, yeah, it's probably going to stay like this for the long term. So number 3 is Hellfire Club from 2004. Dark, heavy, and just awesome are the 3 words that I can describe this record. So many great moments about this record. Everything from Mysteria to the grand 10-minute epic that is The Piper Never Dies. King of Fools is awesome. Forever is a beautiful ballad. Under the Moon, heavy as I will get out. And then you throw in Lavatory Love Machine, which it's okay, but I like that song. I do. But my favorite song on the record has to go to Rise of the Morning Glory. What an awesome power metal song this is. I absolutely adore that track. From the chorus to the verses to literally every single detail. Probably my favorite Edguy song of this era. Like, it would be up there. It really would be. I adore that track. So, Hellfire Club comes in here, number 3. My number 2, we're going to be talking about Theater of Salvation from 1999. This album is flawless. I will just go on and say, this album's flawless. Widely considered to be one of the best power metal albums of all time. Not hard to see why. Not at all. Babylon, one of the best songs they ever did. The Headless Game, very fun track. Land of the Miracle, gorgeous ballad. Wake Up the King, one of the most powerful choruses ever. And of course, how can I not talk about this album without mentioning the grand 14-minute epic that is the title track, Theater of Salvation. One of the best power metal songs I've ever heard. Plain and simple. Just plain and freaking simple. That song is flawless. This album's flawless. It's a perfect album. What more do you want me to say? I love this record. So now we get to Process of Elimination. If you're an Edguy fan, then you already know. My favorite Edguy album of all time is the 2000 album Savage Poetry. Or The Savage Poetry. However you want to say it. But regardless, another flawless album. One of the best power metal albums ever. Ever. And it's definitely one of my favorite power metal albums of all time. Now this one, I actually had some familiarity with it before going into Edguy's discography. I remembered a lot of the tracks from this record, most notably Hallowed, Key to My Fate, Eyes of a Tyrant, and the beautiful ballad that is Roses to No One. So yeah, I kind of cheated with this record a little bit because I did have some familiarity with it. But it's still flawless, even now. I mean, all those tracks that I mentioned, plus Frozen Candle, and my favorite Edguy song of all time, Power and Majesty. This album, plain and simple, is one of my top 10 favorite power metal albums of all time. Plain and freaking simple. Well done, Edguy. Well done. Well done. Okay, now with that said, that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is WaterDive 122 signing out, ready to dive and more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.